Hi, everyone. Welcome. In this brief video clip, you're going to learn about the distinctions between single event trauma, chronic trauma, and complex trauma, and how each type of trauma affects survivors differently, particularly in the context of abusive relationships. I'm going to discuss the psychological and physiological symptoms that trauma survivors experience and why it's so crucial to recognize these symptoms for better self-advocacy and effective treatment. You're going to gain insights into the dynamics of trauma and how to support yourself or how to support others on the path to healing. Please note that this is a shorter clip from a much longer workshop, which we'll link to in the card at the top of the screen. You can also find the link to the full workshop in the description. So please be well, and I hope you find this information valuable. Okay, so single event trauma has a clear beginning, middle, and an end. Once the traumatic event has ended, the survivor of the event can find safety, get help, and recover. Chronic trauma or prolonged and repeated trauma, reoccurring trauma, provides no relief for the person experiencing it. It is repetitive, which means the traumatized individual does not have adequate time to recover and heal before they are re-traumatized again. Like, for example, in abusive situations, they're re-traumatized before they can heal from the last trauma. Complex trauma happens when an individual experiences multiple interpersonal or invasive traumas and where the victim is overcome with a sense of hopelessness and despair. There's a loss of identity. In cases of relational abuse, most often victims are experiencing chronic recurring trauma or complex trauma over a long period of time. They might suffer from prolonged stress and confusion due to the fact that they have not been able to understand the dynamics that they are experiencing are actually abusive and are causing them post-traumatic stress. Most victims don't realize that they have post-traumatic stress. And the more traumatic their experience and the more their symptoms overtake them, the more their mind becomes dysregulated and it becomes really difficult for them to identify what's happening to them. And this and the subsequent physiological symptoms caused by post-traumatic stress are significantly damaging to a victim's mental, emotional, and yes, physical health. And often the victim doesn't understand why. It's important for us to understand trauma better and to be able to identify some of the common symptoms of trauma. For those who are in or have been in abusive relationships, this understanding will help to explain some of the physical, neurological, and psychological symptoms they've been experiencing. Far too often, victims attempt to get medical help without realizing their symptoms are related to abuse-inducing stress. And understanding that connection can help physicians or psychologists to diagnose and treat the medical symptoms without spending significant time and resources guessing what medical conditions are being presented or why they're being presented. Like, what is the source of that? They're very real medical conditions, but they're often induced by stress and high production of cortisol and adrenaline, which in turn exhausts the endocrine system and makes it difficult to defend illnesses. Many victims will testify to having been to many doctor visits without any diagnosis being attributed to ongoing stress or an appropriate treatment given. When we are more aware of our own trauma symptoms, it helps us to self-identify and explore what triggering events has caused them. And by knowing and being aware of your own trauma symptoms, you're able to better advocate for yourself with physicians and psychologists. Being able to connect the trauma symptoms to the circumstances of our relationship helps us to in turn advocate for the right help and treatment that we need, as well as encourage us to take steps to prevent additional events from exacerbating our current condition.